It's a beautiful Thursday morning in Lagos. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the program. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. The countdown is actively on to the 25th February general election in Nigeria, and I'm sure that there will be the governorship election in sometime early in March this year. Everyone is talking about it. Kano was agog yesterday for the APC presidential candidate, and there will be discussions aftermath as to whether or not these numbers will matter. The numbers at the rallies vis-a-vis the numbers that vote. That will be another active conversation. But indeed, we've talked about endorsements coming from past presidents. We've talked about endorsements from other individuals and whether or not that also would matter as to who votes for who in the February election in Nigeria. Our attention this morning, however, is turned to the umpire, the Independent National Electoral Commission. Quite good news yesterday that INEC has now taken into its custody the last batch of the bimodal voter accreditation system. Some were saying that's the game changer for this election, particularly with the enactment of the Electoral Act 2022. A lot of expectations are rife as to how this will impact on the credibility of this particular poll. We'll also be talking about money politics. Recall that CBN has come up with its cash withdrawal policy. Some lawmakers are saying this policy should be extended to after June. And many people are insinuating that perhaps politicians do not want a limitation in the amount of cash they can get just before the election. Dr. Tunji Abayomi is my guest this morning. He's a lawyer, rights activist, and pro-chancellor, chairman, governing council for Adekunle Ajasin University, Akungba Akoko. Dr. Abayomi, good morning and happy New Year to you.
Nifemi, happy New Year.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
All right, so INEC is saying that it's training more than 1.4 million adult staff in the effective use of its bimodal voter registration system for the forthcoming election. So right now we're looking at 176,846 BVAS machines for all the polling units across the country. How excited are you and how optimistic are you for this election, given the fact that BVAS is now backed by law and there's a level of technology that will be used during this election?
Well, I think the entire nation is excited. There's quite a number of agitation and effervescence about the election, but it is also profoundly important that INEC, both in principle and in practice, has continued to improve on election. If we go back to the past, and we follow the trend, we continue to see considerable improvement, which obviously is honorable for us as a nation. And that kind of improvement increases the believability of the people in the electoral process. So with the assurance from INEC, I think people, me, Tunji Abayomi, like any other Nigerian, is excited that we're going to have a free and fair election. But there's an additional input that I think is also significant. In this country, we look at the history of election neurosis or malfeasance. Usually, it's propelled by the government in power because they have all the apparatus of state authority and coercion to have their way. I think it's significant that the president of Nigeria insists that he's going to leave for this nation a free and fair election. He's going to establish that principle. And I think he's been working on that as part of his testament.
Indeed, there's been a track record. You know, when you talk about the Electoral Act, you also look at the body language of Mr. President in the staggered elections we've had in the past. Even in states where candidates have emerged outside his party, he's congratulated them. And he said time without number that he desires to leave a legacy of credible elections. But however, that also would impact on the power of incumbency. Because, you know, if you look at the track record of elections, incumbent parties look forward to winning elections because they have the president on their side. But that's probably not going to happen this time.
Well, I believe APC is going to win. Maybe I should disclose that I'm a member of APC And obviously, part of the leaders of my party in the nation. And I believe the party, the incumbent, has tried in a difficult environment. Buhari is not celebrated as he should. Part of the problem is because the nation went through quite a number of siege. I think the world actually went through siege. For us as a nation, it began with diminishing income. The government went into governance at low income level. And then it's very difficult to run a nation without money because how do you meet the expectation of the people? In addition to that, we were faced with quite a number of challenges, insecurity. I mean, people talk about security today, but we forget that Boko Haram was at Abuja. It blew up part of this police secretariat, National Police Secretariat, UN headquarters, and so on and so forth. We can go into quite a number of challenges that have been subsided. He has confronted them as much as possible. Then, on the side of the economy, well, he's also tried, in my view, looking at it objectively. And on the basis of that, I do not think it's just mere issue of incumbency. Well, yes, that may play some part in terms of persuasion, but I think some achievements have also been recorded. The
point I was actually making was the fact that, for instance, if you take a look at the 2007 election, when President Yar'Adua himself acknowledged that the electoral process that brought him into power was fraudulent. There was a perception where the incumbent president can lord his choice over the nation. That's the point I was making. That is not likely going to happen this time, given the fact that perhaps the best the incumbent president can do is campaign for its preferred candidate and allow the process to do its work.
Well, I think there are 3 areas have made that impossible. First, the law. The situation now is it's difficult to rig election. And where rigging takes place, manipulation, irregularities, it's easy to detect. That's number 1. Number 2, INEC itself has come of age. The days in which the overwhelming influence of the incumbent over INEC is receding with the support of the judiciary as well as the National Assembly. The third point, of course, is also the principle, the acceptance of the principle of election impartiality by the government in power. So, yes, I do agree with you. The overwhelming influence of the incumbent in the electoral process now is receding substantially. And our people have also gained a lot of consciousness. We've been talking about it all along, during our struggle for democracy and so on and so forth. I remember writing to President Obasanjo. Then I said in my last letter to him, because I was writing to him every year, and I said, his tenure will not be remembered for the water or the roads, but for laying appropriate framework for future government. How do you do this? By establishing an impartial, free and fair electoral process. How do you establish a free and fair electoral process? Your party must be ready to lose. And so that's, and I believe this is the principle that Buhari is establishing. Because if your party is ready to lose, although if we establish a free and fair election and your party loses, the nation has won and you'll be remembered, celebrated. But in the past, the problem we had was that the leaders were determined to win when they really have not succeeded in establishing winnability possibility.
You're talking about the do-or-die situation.
Yes, so that's just what has happened in the past.
And you think that has changed now? For instance, you're saying the APC is ready to accept loss in this forthcoming election?
Well, the point
Is there a body language like that, that the president is saying, whichever way this election goes, we will accept it?
Yes. The point is that APC really has no choice now. The nation is not willing to accept any malfeasance, irregularity, irregular election, rigging by the incumbent. And this matter is not just about the nation. All over the local governments, the states, there is a greater consciousness supported by the structure of law now. I mean, you vote at the unit level, the votes go straight to a database. So, I mean, it's easy to find out who are the number of registered, what's the number of registered votes, registered voters, how many votes were cast, and so on and so forth, you know. So APC has no choice but to accept the outcome of election. And that is why I believe APC is campaigning very, very furiously to ensure it wins.
The work now is on the field.
It's on the field, you know what I mean? Even the so-called, the people keep saying the candidate of APC is not well, is not this and that. But the man is digging the soil.
He was in Kano yesterday. Today
Yes.
is in Edo State.
Yes, he's in Edo State. On Friday, he's going to be in Ekiti. On Saturday, he's going to be in Ondo State. And he just came back from Imran. And so how well can a man be if he walks, he climbs, he jumps, he runs?
No. Nobody can doubt that.
I mean,
it is such an Herculean task even for a younger person.
Yes.
So the BVAS is seeking to achieve certain objectives, one of which is verification of the genuineness of the PVC. Yes. Now, a voter can use his or her fingerprint or facial authentication during accreditation. Yes. It also replaces the Z part, which was initially used for uploading polling unit results. So like you said earlier, the moment voting is concluded, the result is uploaded into, an online platform. It also has now eliminated the use of incident forms, which were used previously. If your card is not working, they just bring out the form, and then it also gave room for a lot of manipulation. Yes. But how much impact do you think this would have on voter apathy, which has been a thing in previous elections? We're yet to have 50% of registered voters participating in a general election.
Well, I don't think it will not have it, because in the past, when we didn't have this kind of secure process, we had low voting. Votes will go up as we increase believability in governance in the country. And believability in government is tied to the interests of the people. For example, you will see that the agitation in this election is very substantial. I don't think we have had as much interest among the younger people. I mean, we are constantly, confronting the challenge of, possibility. The next president, I'm on Facebook all the time, attacking either or receiving attack. That's what I mean. So I think we're going to have a lot more votes cast at this particular election.
We have about 9 million new voters in the 2023 election, and different political parties are laying claim on who has the popularity of these young voters. The BVAS will play its part, but how is your party scared of these young voters?
No, not at all.
Given the energy you are getting online, since you said you're on Facebook.
Well, the difference between our party is that we are quiet in terms of our strength. I think it was Wole Soyinka who said, a tiger does not proclaim its tigritude, it demonstrates it. So when the election comes, we will demonstrate our tigritude. We're not going to proclaim it now. But I can assure you, we have quite a number of unsung or even unspoken, a large constituency of young people who believe that this party has tried. Okay, because if you look at the situation of the world, the challenge of the time, or even the tide, so to say, you will agree with me that some efforts have been made substantially. We have not gone underground. Quite a number of nations are facing great difficulty. I just got a note from a friend in US who said a particular product they were buying for $3.60. They now buy one for $6.40. I mean,
we're talking about the implication of global inflation.
Yes, global inflation and
but
challenges.
What's your analysis of why you think young Nigerians are now more interested and willing to participate in the electoral process?
Well, there have been disappointment in the past, to be honest with you. We went into the struggle for democracy in order to bring about a better nation. When we were younger, why did we fight against the military? We want a better nation. We went to jail several times, in my case 3 times, one for 1 year. So you
were in jail for 1 year?
Yes, I was in jail. And the third one was in just prison. You know, 11 months, really. And then there's another one and another one. I think when we are young, it was Plato who said the time for best effort is when we are young. Young people are very idealistic. They want things to be done and done as soon as possible. So the truth of the matter is that the past has really not honored this nation. A lot of it is not entirely the problem of the elders. Systematic disorder. Military came when we were advancing and took over everything and ruined everything. Extremely corrupt and highly irresponsible. They've abused their rights and then imposed on us a constitution according to his wish, contrary to the law and contrary to the norms of constitutionality and contrary to legitimacy. Because when they gave themselves power, they gave themselves power to make a law, not power to make a constitution. And a constitution is not law. It's an agreement by the people on how they want to be governed. They messed up everything, apart from destroying the economy immensely. So we had that problem. Then politicians, when they came back, instead of raising the consciousness and the challenge of leadership, they were more preoccupied with the badge of office instead of the burden of office. Now, the young people who grew up with these experiences, obviously, they were traumatized and they want change. And that is really what is happening. It's happening all over the world, as a matter of fact.
I like your honest analysis of what has happened in the past.
Yes.
The concern, however, is that many of these young people see the PDP and the APC as a representation of that corrupt establishment that has been responsible for the past that has brought us to where we are. As some would say, that makes it more difficult for your party in this forthcoming election.
No, the point is that this election is going to focus more on persons instead of parties. The truth of the matter is that PDP and APC, or APC and APC, they represent the past. And unfortunately, the young people didn't see the past to have, given them enough of happiness. Otherwise, why is all our people running out of the country? You get what I mean? However, what I know, and I can tell the people of Nigeria, is that the candidate of APC is very determined to give to this nation a last testament, to turn this nation to a great nation. He is extremely determined to do that, if God gives him life. That I can assure all the young people. I mean, there was a discussion in my own home between me and my son, who is 34 years old.
Okay.
He went to Buckingham, he's a lawyer, like any young people, and he was doubtful initially. So one day I took him to see the candidate Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I said, well, I'm not going to consider. You have this dialogue with him in his house in Abuja. After the dialogue, he said, Dad, the man is very sound. The man is very
was
sound.
when?
It was discussed. This was before primary. This was before primary. And then they were discussing the wealth of the nation. That was the topic. And he was electrified when Tinubu was discussing these issues. Since that time, he's become is it bolafied?
Perhaps you should tell your candidate to engage the media more if you could have convinced your son, because not everyone like your son has that privilege of having that conversation with him.
Well,
because many of the things they have against him online now is the fact that he's not honoring as many media interviews, debates, and the rest.
Well, I think he's trying. The point is that it's difficult to go into the den of a lion when, for example, a media house has already made up his mind. He's always talking about everything negative about a candidate. I don't want to go to social media. For what use? What are you going to achieve? At the end of it all, the media isn't going to vote, But I believe that for national dialogue, more of that needs to be done. And as we move further into between now and February, more of that is going to be done. But the reality of the matter is that sometimes it's suspicious. Some of our media houses, I'm sorry to say, you understand what I mean? If you only rise, for the negative, you understand what I mean? So then where do we go from there?
I hope you didn't use that word
intentionally. The ethics of the profession expects objectivity.
Okay. Well, I get that point very, very sincerely. I'd like us to talk about the role of money politics in all of this, because that has played a huge role, particularly in the staggered elections we've had prior to this time. In Ekiti, for instance, there were a lot of allegations as to how the big parties were throwing money around. And now with 133 million Nigerians, according to the latest report, living with multidimensional poverty, it makes it more difficult to convince the Nigerian electorate not to receive money to vote if they cannot afford, a quality style of living. So how do you think that will change in February?
Well, it's going to change a little bit, but not a whole lot. Remember, the Bible says, don't make me so poor that I will curse you, or so rich that I will forget you. I think it was President Obasanjo in the conference I had, African-European Conference on Human Rights, that said poverty kills faster than abuse of human rights. If we want to change money politics in this country, we must change the politics of poverty to politics of wealth. I mean,
that's a huge dilemma, Dr. Abayomi, because to change this poverty reality, as some are saying, we have to change the leadership. So it will take a political leadership to make Nigerians wealthy, or at least raise them from poverty. So it makes it difficult to trash that issue.
So you must first of all,
go back
you
to
must
the
look
polls.
for a leader that can create wealth. As I keep telling people, what really is the greatest challenge this nation faces? The greatest challenge Nigeria faces is to create wealth, is to be rich. That's the greatest challenge. And basically, that's the greatest challenge of any home, any period.
That's right.
So you, in order to reduce poverty, you've got to increase wealth. And so you have to look for a leader that can do that. I mean, if you look at this nation, the tragedy of this nation, you have lost so much. If you look at from independence, how many companies have left, just collapsed. I mean, I remember when I was young, we were going to GB Olivant and all this, in Lagos here, running there, to look at things. And there's so many companies like that are simply not. We were sending goods out of this country to many places. So you now have to remake Nigeria, rebirth Nigeria. Economically, your central focus should be economy, because a whole lot of problems we have are consequences of poverty. in a large population of unfulfilled expectation, there will be quite a lot of neurosis that will disturb the nation. I mean, even in a home, poverty, you know, it's terrible. It was in the Russian parliament that they said a hungry mouth does not understand the language of persuasion. So we must reduce poverty. That should be the central issue. When you are looking at the leader for the next time, the question you should ask yourself, who can raise wealth, make wealth, increase wealth, enhance wealth for the Federal Republic of Nigeria?